Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Today I thought I would address a topic that gets brought up a lot and people start saying things like, look, once someone goes on gear, it totally changes everything. And there's natty people and there's enhanced people. And what people need to understand, that doesn't work that way. And I think we could use two perfect examples like Seid and Cutler. Mainly because, they're similar height, similar bone structure, similar haircuts, similar ethnicity, all of these things, right? They have actually reasonably similar bone structures. However, Cutler is much, much larger than Seid. They both have been professionals in the IFBB, which does not drug test, and therefore it's assumed by default that if there is no drug testing, and you are a professional, meaning that you've done well enough to actually earn your living and get a paycheck from doing it, and you're competing in a completely untested environment and where everyone can use anything and everything they want, it's fair to say they're both on stuff. But what people need to understand is that there is an enormous difference between what people use. And these two guys demonstrate that very, very well, because again, if we want to talk about in terms of just the structure, muscle insertions, all that stuff, they're both above average genetics, and I think everyone agrees on that. They both have well above average structures for genetics, bodybuilding, physique, all that stuff. They have similar structures. Why does one of them carry an 80 pounds more muscle than the other one? Simply put, the short answer, the amount of stuff they use. Because they both have that dry, peeled, full look. We can assume they use similar things when they get closer to compete or a photo shoot, right? Because they have a similar look to their musculature, right? They both are able to get that dry, full look. Which is, indicative of using various compounds. The difference here is that one of them is much, much, much larger than another. And people need to understand that difference. And if you don't understand that difference, you clearly haven't been to gyms and talked to people and figured out that there are tons of guys using stuff who really aren't that big. But like with anything else, the poison is in the dose. And we know this. We know this based upon human studies, human trials, and we'll talk in a minute about some YouTubers who've admitted what they use. But look at human trials. What have we found consistently? That the more stuff that a healthy young man is given by the researchers, the more muscle they gain, right? In other words, when we take people and we don't even have them work out, we just have them sit on a couch. There have been studies done with 20 weeks where they compared different amounts of stuff, and the guys who are given 300 milligrams gain X amount of muscle, there's a range, while sitting on the couch. Guys who are given 600 milligrams gain 50% more muscle. So in other words, for every 2 pounds of muscle the guys on the 300 milligrams gain, the guys on the 600 milligrams in those same number of weeks gained 3 pounds of muscle instead of 2, confirmed by DEXA scans. This has been done in multiple studies. There's a dose-dependent response with these anabolic substances. In other words, the more that people take, again, assuming nutrition's on point, assuming recovery, sleep, all those factors are there, if they're getting enough protein, enough rest, they gain more muscle. And there's a direct relationship to what they take. And what people need to understand is how big that gap is. Everyone's like, wow, this guy went on stuff and he gained some muscle, but I thought he would gain more. He doesn't look like a pro bodybuilder. Well, why would they? Why would they look like a pro bodybuilder? The average guy, go look at various forums going way back for years and years of people reporting their results and what they take. There's plenty of guys out there who use 300, 400, 500 milligrams, and that's a cycle for them, right? That's normal. That's pretty common. Look at what other people admit to using. What did Jerry Ward cycle, the one that we got published, that I published, what was Jerry Ward on? 2,000 milligrams plus GH plus IGF-1, 2 grams. I have messages going way back in the day to Eric Konevsky, where Eric Konevsky was under 200 pounds and had gone on up to 2 grams, right? 1.5 to 2 grams, trying to get back up above 200 pounds. Okay? So you have right there a couple guys right there who aren't enormous who are on 2 grams. Now, obviously, Konevsky got a lot bigger, and we have no idea. I wouldn't even speculate what he took later. I have no idea. Never talked to him about it. But back before he and I were reasonably big on YouTube, we talked. Like, I knew Eric way back in the day. Back when he was a teenager trying to put on size, we were in same groups online. We were in certain circles together. So I had an idea of what he was doing. Rich Piana is bigger by the day, 4.5 grams. What do people say? That was fairly conservative in the pros. Boston Lloyd, I mean, look at what Boston Lloyd has admitted to, even on YouTube. So you see all this stuff, and people need to understand that there is an enormous difference in degrees of enhancement. And people have these ideas that there's natty and there's enhanced, and that everyone who's enhanced is obviously, if they know how to train it all, is just going to be pro bodybuilder size. And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. And people need to understand that there are people, and the guys who've been doing this a long time, it's not uncommon to see guys who use only up to 1 gram or less. They cycle on and off, or they blast and they cruise. They go on TRT and they go up to 750, 500, or 1 gram for 10, 12 weeks, and then they go back down to TRT the rest of the year. Or guys who cycle on and off. That is the norm. That is what the overwhelming majority of recreational enhanced lifters do. There are even guys who compete in the NPC who do that. I've known guys who compete who do. I know guys who compete in powerlifting at very high levels who do that. All right, that's the norm. Well, if you have guys doing 3, 4, 5 grams a week and then stacking all these other things with it for years, and that's what pro bodybuilders are doing, why in the world would anyone expect them to be pro bodybuilder size? Look at the stuff with Dallas McCarver. According to Dallas McCarver's blood work, a reasonable person could extrapolate based upon the blood work on his autopsy that he was using as much as 10 grams, 10,000 milligrams a week. 10,000. If the average person who's doing stuff is doing 500 or 600 or 750, compare that with 10,000. I mean, guys, even Jerry Ward weighing low 200s on 2 grams. There are degrees of enhancement. It's not, there's natty, there's enhanced. There's natty is one end of the spectrum, and then enhanced, and then there's various degrees of enhancement. You know, there are various degrees, and I know guys personally, you guys would be shocked at how much some guys use and don't get as good a results as you might expect because they're just not genetically gifted or their training isn't on point. You would be really surprised, but the point is there's a big difference here, and there's a reason Jeff Seid, even though he very clearly uses a little bit of stuff, clearly just for aesthetics and everything, because he's not really that big, very clear a lot of these guys use, but they're not pro bodybuilder size because they don't use the quantities and combinations for the durations that they do. There's an enormous difference. They just don't use as much stuff. And of course the argument could be made that at a certain threshold even more stuff stops adding more results also, because there's a finite amount that any given person's going to grow based upon their genetics, androgen receptor count, all of this stuff. And that's the other thing that's been noted over the years too. The literature shows that the higher doses people use, they eventually adapt and get better at growing on higher amounts because of androgen receptor upregulation. So again, it kind of goes back to the point of how do these guys get this big? They have to use a lot of stuff for a really long time. It's not because they use stuff that they're that big. It's because they abuse enormous amounts for years on end to get that big. And so people need to get this idea out of their head that they're going to go do, you know, a couple of cycles and they're going to gain 10 pounds of muscle and keep it every time they do a cycle. And, you know, then in a year and a half time, they're going to look like Jay Cutler. That's not the real world. That's not reality. These guys aren't using, these really big guys, they're not using the amounts that the guys at your gym are using. And they're not doing cycles. They are long-term, mind-boggling amount abusers. And that's why they're all dropping dead on us and getting sick. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.